Hey everybody, good to see you back again. So a little bit of progress to report. Well, maybe not progress. We've definitely been battling some things, but we'll just lead off with, we've been fighting some bull gears. You can see this assembly is still greasy, oily, nasty, but we've been doing some work to this one. We're in for a fight here, guys. More on these later. In the meantime, we're going to roll right back to the final housings, and I'm going to finish disassembling everything that needs to come out of those. And then we'll address what's happening over there. So first thing we need to do is get the brake band out of each housing. A couple of talking points from the comment section below the last video. A couple people were looking at the friction that's left on these, saying that they look pretty darn good, and they are. These things look like new. There's plenty of service life left in them yet. Another person asked if these could still be relined, because they used to do it back in the day. Yes, my local clutch and brake shop has relined these D2 bands for me before, and they come back looking just like this. So there's really no reason to have anything done with these. I'm just going to clean them up. They're going to be good to go again. One other question was, could these bands be taken out with the final still on the transmission? That's a hard no. You're going to have the final drive off, and you're even going to have the drum out of the middle in order to get these out. So big job no matter how you look at it. But first thing we need to do is remove this pin. There's a cotter pin or a split pin on each end. You got to remove the one down in here. I did that off camera because it's kind of tedious. And I think, yep, these are just going to drift out without any problems at all. So we're tipped upright again, just trying to get the best view of all these things. But next step is to remove this little 2-bolt cover. One of these on each side. This is where you go in to adjust the brake bands. And you can see in here we have this, it's kind of a tall nut. You just need to back that all the way off. Just compressing the band with the wrench a little bit to get room to get that nut out. So now you can see the nut has these 2 points on the bottom, and the anchor on the brake band has corresponding grooves. And we have the spring down here. So the spring keeps tension up on the band, and that keeps the points on the nut down into both of those grooves, and that keeps your adjustment from backing off during normal operations. So that's how they hold all that together. Do all the same stuff on the other side. Now we can roll each band out. Pivot it far enough to get it off of the pull rod. And it comes out. Might as well pull the springs while we're in there. So it's at this point you would normally go in here and remove this pin and the pull rod from the pivot, and then you'd come around here and remove this pin and dog bone link from the actuator, and you would just leave the pivot inside because it's on this pin that goes all the way through like 4 inches of case right here, and it's held on the outside by this bolt and kind of this flat wedge that doesn't really want to come out of there right now. Yep, this is live, folks. Here. There, that piece goes right in that little groove right there. Normally these never come out because they rust in so tight, and as long as this pivot in here is pivoting and it doesn't seem excessively loose, you can just leave it. If you need to get these out and they're rusted, you have to drill and then you got to drill all that out and then make an all new shaft. But we're just going to see if we can get really lucky and these things actually move. Ha! Look at that. I kind of don't even believe it myself. Not even fighting. Okay, let's see about this side. There's no way both of them are going to do it. Huh. Nope. Okay, this is the 1%er, everybody. I've never had a D2 where both of these actually came out. So that made our lives a ton easier. All we have to do is get this cotter pin out of here, drift that pin out of the dog bone so the whole actuator comes off. You can reach back to the inside and pull the pivot out with the pull rod still attached. I'm not kidding when I said this is the 1%er, because 99% of the time you don't get these pieces out. It's, well, they put a lot of grease in there, didn't they? Like seeing old grease. That means they were shooting it full all the time. So saving the metal. I think they had even more grease on this side. Okay, so I think the last pieces I'm going to pull out of these housings are these inner bearings. There's an oil compartment just on the other side of those. It's hard to get into. It collects a lot of really nasty sludge, and it just opens it up so much better to get in there and clean that if you get those bearings right out of there. So both of those will be knocked out next. This intermediate bearing race on each side is going to stay right where it is because there's really no reason to take it out. If we were going to take it out, you have to drill out. There's a 1/2-inch cup plug in this hole right here, and there's like a pin beneath that, or a dowel. Here's an intermediate race I pulled from my parts stash. That pin goes down into that pocket right there, keeps it from spinning, keeps it from drifting in and out. So if we were going to remove those, that would have to come out of there first. Pin comes out, and then you could knock that out as well. Okay, so that's as far down as we're taking both of these. I tell you what, lots of cleanup time ahead of me between both of these. It's probably going to be a couple days to get both of those clean and prepped. There's not a single compartment on either one of these that's very good at all. But so we're done with those. Now we can go back to these bull gears and sprocket shafts. And well, I'll tell you what, we've got that one pretty well prepped to press the gear off the shaft. Let's do the same with this one. So the first piece we take off is this 4-bolt cover that is over the outer bearing. This is a hallmark of the J-Series tractors. They all had these removable plates. You know, okay, 1113s fared pretty well. You can actually still see the part number stamped in there. But tractors in severe duty applications, not so much. Usually you'll see them looking a lot like this. You can see this one's got a lot of damage on the edges. It's even been crushed in. You can see where the bearing and the pinion had been wearing into the back of it. Or they can even look like this. That one was just about torn away, crunched up, not sealing anymore. Yeah, the tracks would snag a lot of stuff and bring it around and just tear these things right up. Oh, and if you're wondering, the Beer Can D2 did provide us with these two examples. But like I said, these were a hallmark for the J-Series tractors. By the time the U-Series came out, they had already redesigned this cover, but they were just using up the remaining stocks that they had of these things with removable plates. I don't have a 4U book, but I know my 5U book shows that, like, by tractor number like 47 or 48, they had exhausted their supply of these, and then the majority of the U-Series covers then just had this as solid cast. There was not even a removable piece right here. It was a much stronger design. So with that out of the way, 4 bolts, and the cover just lifts off. I'll say this, even though those removable covers were kind of weak, it sure makes it a lot more convenient for getting that bearing out. With those things stuck down in a blind hole on the later covers that are just solid cast, it's really difficult to get them pulled. But yeah, still just amazed at how good these bearings all look. There, we flattened the big metal lock. And before we can loosen the big nut, we need to lock this bull gear from spinning. So we've got the same piece of metal that I had bolted to the side of the transmission housing when I held the bevel shaft for turning. I put this big 5/8 bolt in it and drilled a couple more 3/8 holes on each side, so that 5/8 bolt will go through one of the 3 holes in the bull gear, like that, and we'll run some 3/8 bolts there, and there to lock that whole thing to the cover. Alright, so to remove the big nut, I've got this Armstrong 3.5-inch wrench. Now this is actually a 1B7412 Cat D8 track adjuster wrench. I bought it at an auction. Still has my bidding number on it. It was, okay, we're gonna get off on a tangent here. It was on a pallet full of crap. I mean, there was just crap on that thing, but then I saw this and I found the Cat number. So I bid it up to $4 choice. I pulled this off the pallet and somebody else bought the whole rest of the pallet for another $4, but still, I was happy. Heck of a nice wrench for $4, right? So, yeah, this is a 3.5. It's a little bit loose on that nut, but it usually gets the job done. And that's probably going to be like a 3 3/8 or something. I don't know. And with that, the large nut comes off and fold over lock. So we now have 2 cover assemblies prepped for the pressing. So this is where that battle that I mentioned comes into play. I've already made one attempt at pressing a bull gear, and I don't have the equipment to do it. At least I'm not set up for it yet. So I'll show you the right, correct, and proper way to do it. We have the Caterpillar Service Tools book out here again. So yeah, same setup we have in the D2. It says final drive gear removal. The Caterpillar Service Press is a positive means of removing the final drive gear on the D2 and other tractors having this type of final drive arrangement. The pressure is applied against the bearing, which in turn forces the gear off the shaft. And they give you the adapter sleeve and coupling and then the press. And unfortunately, we don't have all that good stuff. But I turned this sleeve out, which will press on the bearing. So we have a bull gear and a bearing from my parts pile. And we cut a radius in there to clear the shoulder that's on the shaft that goes up against the bearing. So we placed everything, this is upside down of how they're sitting over there, but we placed everything into my little cheapy 20-ton service press over there and put some power to it. Now, the problem is when you start pressing that bearing, you're going to unseat the bearing on the shaft, it's going to drift up, and it's going to contact the backside of that bull gear on its hub. The roller cage is the high point of that bearing, so you're going to collapse that cage and ruin the bearing every time. So sure enough, we did that. The press had no problem unseating the bearing. It drew up against that hub. I could hear the bearing crunch down. The thing hasn't really wanted to spin since, which I pretty much knew that was going to happen anyway. And I cranked that thing up and gave it everything that it had. As much pressure as we've ever had on that press. And no dice. All I really did was made that press frame about a ½ an inch taller than it was. It's amazing how stretchy that cheap China steel is. But as long as I had it all cranked up, I figured, what do I have to lose? I put a piece of plywood on top of the frame, and I took that 12-pound sledge and I belted it. And then that fell off, so I clamped a piece of steel to the top, and I hit it a few more times, even harder. And that still didn't work, so I left full pressure on it all night long, came back in the morning, and sure enough, it was still tight, nothing had popped. So I wheeled the whole thing outside and put a little bit of heat on the hub. Tried it all over again. And still no luck. So yeah, I was hoping the heating and cooling, expansion, contraction would help me out a little bit, but bottom line, I didn't have enough surface area to put heat on, being that more than half the taper is trapped below the gear anyhow. You can't get at it from the other side. That cheap press is just not able to exert enough pressure on it anyway. I'm pretty sure the frame is the weak leg of the system. It starts giving way before the cylinder maxes out, and I was hoping it wouldn't be that bad, but I'm really not that surprised because these bow gears are like the tightest press fit on a D2. I believe book spec says 25 tons. So, and I'm pretty confident that the last person that assembled these pressed them on at 25 tons. So, you know, I've just never really been set up to handle a press fit that tight. So we're trying to remedy that. But, you know, the last one of these that I fought with, I took down to a local tractor repair, I was going to say dealership, but establishment. And they have a great big home-built press. It's like 20 feet tall, stands outside their shop. They hook it up to hydraulics on a tractor. So he put that cover and bow gear and shaft and everything in there and wound that tractor out and spooled the hydraulics until the relief valves were singing, and it just held fast. So he went over and he's going to give the gear a smack with a hammer. He does like the first little ting, like the little aim tap before he winds up and swings. As soon as that hammer tinged that gear, that shaft blasted out of there. I had the nut on there to save it, you know, to catch it, but I think he jumped about 3 feet off the ground, and well, by the time we got it back out of the press, pretty much told me he didn't care to ever do that again. So we're not going back there again. I don't want to press my luck. So that means I need to build basically a version of that cat service press where we can actually pull on the heavy part of the shaft out here instead of pressing on the light part of it there, exert pressure on that bearing like we were doing, and hopefully exceed the press fit of that taper and pop that out. So we stood tall. You know, I'm reinvesting back into the channel here, guys. I know I talk about, you know, ads and memberships and subscribers and everything a lot, and like, you know, when I talk about doing things, I use the word we instead of I, because it really is a we thing. You know, without the revenue sources that the channel generates, I couldn't do most of the stuff. I could do it, but I'd have to do it at a considerably slower pace, as, you know, funds would allow. So, you know, I'm trying to take and reinvest as much of that back into the channel as possible. And this is something I've been looking at doing for a while, because I've got some D6 stuff coming up that I know that little 17.5 ton ram of mine is not even going to touch. So we popped for, this is a 30 ton hollow ram cylinder. I was going to go with the 50. Problem is the 50s are all out of stock until like June. I wanted to get something sooner than that. 30s are still available, so I bought a pretty complete set. A couple pieces are still on their way, but yeah, 2.5 inch stroke, 30 ton capacity, OTC hollow ram. It's going to fit on the hand pump that already works with my 17.5, and my gauge has a 30 scale, so we're already set up to power this thing. We have the adapter plate for mounting it to the various different pulling attachments. We have yeah, there's those are some puller bars, man, let me tell you. Links, we have all the hardware, we have the standout rods, the legs for the push puller for the big bar. We got some more hardware in here. We have the threaded center forcing screw that threads in the center of that hollow ram to give you some better adjustability. Pretty complete set. We got a gigantic bearing splitter that's a part of this, hasn't showed up yet, but yeah, that thing's like, it's just as redonkulous as the rest of it. Funny part is, this showed up, UPS guy was kind of giving me the evil eye because, you know, just this box here weighed 88 pounds and we still had the rest of that stuff. So I clicked a picture and sent it off to one Rick Bork, and then he immediately reminded me of the time that I borrowed his drill bits. Drill bits. So, you know, it was basically a situation where I either got a heavier duty hollow ram with a puller set, or I invested in a higher quality, heavier duty shop press. And that hollow ram with puller set is going to be way more useful to me in way more places than a shop press in a fixed position. So that's the way we went. But before we start putting pressure on anything, I need to build an adapter. So we need to join the center forcing screw to the end of that sprocket shaft. So this screw is 1 1/4 by 7 threads per inch. The sprocket shaft is 1 7/8 by 12 threads per inch. And all I can say is thank God for companies like Fastenal and Granger. I was able to go on, find threaded couplings, threaded nuts, just some various different parts pieces, some hardware, all of the appropriate size and thread pitch, so I can start trying to build something that's going to withstand 20 plus tons of, well, I was going to say pressure, but in this case it's going to be tension. So we're going to be pulling pretty hard on that thing, possibly up to 30 ton. I don't know. The old brain's been kind of working here lately. I have a few ideas, but I got to wait to see what shows up and get it all in my hand and figure out, well, what it looks like and how to start building. So I got shipping notices on all those items yesterday. I'm expecting they're probably going to start rolling in tomorrow. So once that starts showing up, we're going to start building, do a little fabrication, and then see if we can't make something explode, right? So that's where we are. It's where we stand. It's going to be nice to try and get fixed up so that I can finally handle that aspect of a D2 and I don't have to try and find somebody else to do it all for me. So we're going to wrap it right here. Nothing left to do right now until some stuff shows up. Thanks everybody for the views. Thanks for the subs. Thanks for the memberships. Thanks for sitting through the ads. Like I said, I'm trying to work all that stuff to our best advantage and put it back in and have a better channel. So far it's been working out, I think. I appreciate the heck out of all you guys. Hope to see you all back again.